Hi. I am continuing to read from C.S. Lewis's book, Four Loves, which discusses the Greek words for love, their meanings, different words for the different aspects of that word. So the one we discussed in the previous videos was affection, storge. So now we're moving to another Greek word for love, which is philia, for friendship. One of the strongest examples in the scriptures of a friendship would be that of David and Jonathan. So I thought to spend a little bit of time just discussing that friendship, how it developed, and I would recommend, and we won't do this now, but I would recommend reading 1 Samuel's chapters 14 to 20 if you want to see how that relationship developed. But I did think to make a few selections so that we can kind of get the gist of how that friendship developed. So I'm reading from 1 Samuel chapter 18, verses 1 to 3. After David had finished talking with Saul, this is on the occasion of Goliath having been killed, Jonathan became one in spirit with David, and he loved him as himself. From that day Saul kept David with him, and did not let him return to his father's house. And Jonathan made a covenant with David, because he loved him as himself. Then chapter 19, when jealousy arises in the heart of Saul, this is the occasion when Jonathan tries to persuade his dad not to kill him. Saul told his son Jonathan and all the attendants to kill David. But Jonathan was very fond of David and warned him, "My father Saul is looking for a chance to kill you. Be on your guard. Tomorrow morning, go into hiding and stay there. I will go out and stand with my father in the field where you are. I'll speak to him about you, and I will tell you what I find out." Jonathan spoke well of David to Saul his father, and said to him, "Let not the king do wrong to his servant David. He has not wronged you, and what he has done has benefited you greatly. He took his life in his hands when he killed the Philistine. The Lord won a great victory for all Israel, and you saw it and were glad. Why then would you do wrong to an innocent man like David by killing him for no reason?" Saul listened to Jonathan and took this oath, "As surely as the Lord lives, David will not be put to death." So Jonathan called David and told him the whole conversation, and he brought him to Saul. And David was with Saul as before. And then in chapter 20, verses 16 and 17, it says, "Jonathan made a covenant with the house of David, saying, 'May the Lord call David's enemies to account.' And Jonathan had David reaffirm his oath out of love for him, because he loved him as he loved himself." So they made a covenant of care for each other's families on this occasion. And then verses 41 and 42 of chapter 20 as well. This is after he finds out his father's still intent on killing David. And David has been in hiding while he talked with his father, or found out his father's feelings. David got up from the south side of the stone and bowed down before Jonathan 3 times, with his face to the ground. Then they kissed each other and wept together, but David wept the most. And Jonathan said to David, "Go in peace, for we have sworn friendship with each other in the name of the Lord, saying, 'The Lord is witness between you and me, and between your descendants and my descendants forever." And then David left, and Jonathan went back to town. So what was it that was behind this friendship between these two men? I think if you look at a snapshot of Jonathan's character and a snapshot of David's character, you have the answer. So I thought to read two passages that kind of give you a snapshot of their character. In 1 Samuel chapter 14, you have a snapshot of the character of Jonathan. Verses 6 to 12. Jonathan said to his young armor-bearer, "Come, let us go over to the outpost of those uncircumcised fellows. Perhaps the Lord will act on our behalf. Nothing can hinder the Lord from saving, whether by many or by few." "Do all that is in your mind," his armor-bearer said. "Go ahead. I am with you, heart and soul." Excuse me. Well, that sounds like a friend, another friend. Jonathan said, "Come then. We will cross over toward the men and let them see us. If they say to us, 'Wait there until we come to you,' we will stay where we are and not go up to them. But if they say, 'Come up to us,' we will climb up, because that will be our sign that the Lord has given them into our hands." So both of them showed themselves to the Philistine outpost. "Look," said the Philistines, "the Hebrews are crawling out of the holes they are hiding in." And the men of the outpost shouted to Jonathan and his armor-bearer, "Come up to us, and we'll teach you a lesson." So Jonathan said to his armor-bearer, "Climb up after me. The Lord has given them into the hand of Israel." That shows you the character of Jonathan. Jonathan has a confidence in God and in God's power to save, whether by few or by many. He knows that God is the one to be trusted. Now look at a little snapshot of the character of David, one that's probably more familiar to us. In his confidence about approaching Goliath, here's a conversation that Saul has with David before he goes up. Saul replied, You are not able to go out against this Philistine and fight him. You are only a boy, and he has been a fighting man from his youth." But David said to Saul, "Your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came out and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it, struck it, and rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by its hair and struck it and killed it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord, who delivered me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear, will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine." Saul said to David, "Go, and the Lord be with you." And then when David is speaking with Goliath, this is what it says in verses 45 to 47. David said to the Philistine, "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will hand you over to me, and I'll strike you down and cut you off, and cut off your head. Today I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds of the air and the beasts of the earth, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel." All those gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands. So I always found this a very inspiring presentation from David to the Philistine. It just fires you up. But it's similar. You see the similarity between his attitude and Jonathan's attitude. I think that's the answer to why they had this friendship. They thought the same way. They had the same confidence, the same convictions about God. Jonathan believed that David was called by God to be the next king. Now, Jonathan is the king's son. He's in line to be king, the next king. But Jonathan is willing to sacrifice that claim because he believes in David. He believes that David is chosen of God. So he will have loyalty to that because it's loyalty to God over loyalty to his father or the kingdom, what would be viewed as the current organization of the nation of Israel. He was going to go where he saw God's hand, and that's not something that I think we could see so clearly when we were witnesses. In his own comments, Lewis's comments, this is what he has to say about friendship. Those who cannot conceive friendship as a substantive love, but only as a disguise or elaboration of eros, betray the fact that they have never had a friend. The rest of us know that though we can have erotic love and friendship for the same person, yet in some ways nothing is less like a friendship than a love affair. Lovers are always talking to one another about their love. Friends hardly ever about their friendship. Lovers are normally face to face, absorbed in each other. Friends, side by side, absorbed in some common interest. Above all, eros, while it lasts, is necessarily between two only. But two, far from being a necessary number for friendship, is not even the best. And the reason for this is important. True friendship is the least jealous of loves. True friends delight to be joined by a third, and a third by a fourth, if only the newcomer is qualified to become a real friend. They can then say, as the blessed souls say in Dante, "Here comes one who will augment our loves." For in this love, to divide is not to take away. And then a few more comments he has on the nature of friendship. He says, "It is an affair of disentangled or stripped minds. Eros will have naked bodies, friends, naked personalities. Hence, if you will not misunderstand me, the exquisite arbitrariness and irresponsibility of this love. I have no duty to be anyone's friend, and no man in the world has a duty to be mine. No claims, no shadow of necessity. Friendship is unnecessary, like philosophy, like art, like the universe itself, for God did not need to create. It has no survival value. Rather, it is one of those things which give value to survival." So how or what creates friendships? I would say, from what Lewis has just said, and from our example of Jonathan and David, that it's oftentimes a common experience, whether it's a good one or a bad one, a hardship or an ordeal, or shared convictions. That is what creates friendships, and we have seen this in the modern world as well. Under stressful situations, you could use the example of the Depression era. communities and neighborhoods ended up becoming very close-knit, and there was friendships developed because they had this common bad experience happening to them, and it made them needful of each other and aware of each other's needs. So it created a kind of friendship. And I can testify to our experience with the ex-witness community. Even in the last few years, we are adding daily to our friendship list people who've had a common experience, and then we get closer even to some folks and have regular meetings with them, Zoom meetings. This has all come about because of a shared conviction that we have. We want to keep our faith, we love God, and we love Christ. I'm going to link a video that we did based on Ray Franz's book, In Search of Christian Freedom, called JW Friendships Can't Survive Org Loyalty Test. And a second one, which is from the Screw Tape Letters series that I did, called Humility, Self-Forgetfulness, Self-Sacrifice, Marks of All Who Claim to be Christians.